Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Mike Lynch and Repo Rod.
Repo.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Bill.
What's going on, man?
Same old,
Happening.
same old.
How you guys been?
Cold.
Okay.
Very cold.
So I
Yeah.
got-
Yeah. I'm we get ours up here too, believe me.
Yeah.
For sure. So I got two participants for the Falling Angels documentary. We got a lot of really good content. I've been going over it, and it's pretty damn good so far.
Yeah. And like I said, a couple days ago, I was browsing things and I saw a live chat or whatever by when he was doing it by the ocean there. And I fucked it up and I missed it. So anyway, I got back to it an hour later and I watched it 2 or 3 times and I listened to the contact or the context of his podcast there. And I thought that, I've had the same feeling that he has about things that we're stating on this thing. And, his big deal is that, he's getting paid for all these things,
Yep.
and that's great. But like I've said from the very beginning, as long as you tell the truth, I don't give a but some of these statements and some of these things that he's putting out there, he's representing that he knows these things for facts, and that, if he didn't know, nobody else would.
Yeah.
And I beg to differ, because I'm on the West Coast. I have personal involvement with that guy in a situation where I sat down for 7 months. Excuse
Yeah.
me.
Oh,
cut
it
my
was
time.
Rod's. You were watching.
It was
Yeah,
Rod's.
mine.
remember that's when I called you and I said, "Hey,
Yeah.
Rod's got something on here that I haven't heard before," and it seems to me he's pretty adamant about what he's saying. And at the end of it, there was no doubt in my mind exactly what he had to say. And that's when I called you and I said, "Hey, so I'm not the only one that feels the same way about some of the things that are being put out that, may or may not involve any of us. But one thing is for sure, anything that I have to say is not hearsay, rumor control, sitting at the bar, doing this or doing that. That's not what this is about. This is exactly, the things that I know or what I went through and the reasons why, and I've kept my mouth shut for 10 years because there's other people involved here. And just like in my case, when I got it, my attorney had called me up and said, "Hey, I just got a bunch of shit from Ventura." And I go, "Well, what do you mean by shit?" He goes, "Well, man, it's a huge box full of discovery." And it was all tape recordings and CDs. Okay. And I says, "What?" He goes, "Well, I got to ask you, do you know somebody named George Christie?" First thing he asked me. And I says, "Well, yeah, he's the head honcho down in Ventura." He goes, "Well, you need to get your to my office. And we need to sit down and you need to hear what is being said and why and in what context." I said, "Okay." So I did just that. I went down there and, it took me 5 days at approximately 8 hours a day to go through all the recordings.
Mm.
And these recordings were made by 2 gang task force officers. They stated during all these recordings that they had some issues in Ventura they were trying to follow up on, and that's what they were doing. And they said, "Hey, we're gonna stop at each guy's house," and he'd identify, "Hey, we're at so and so's house. It's me and Officer so and so, and we're gonna go in here and we're gonna rattle the tree and find out what falls." And that's what they did to each and every person that they interviewed in Ventura. Some were members, some were prospects, some were hang-arounds, and then there was 2 wives that got in there that was mad as.
Let me ask you a question. Did they all talk? Did they all talk?
Yes. Everybody. There wasn't anybody. One of the prospects kind of, after he seen where it was going, he just put a kibosh to it. Said, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable. That's it." But let's say 10 or 12 more individuals, regardless of what their relationship was a club. I didn't know which guy was a hanger. I don't know these guys' names. I just know what is in these recordings and why they're going to each one of these guys to get a statement. And there was no doubt at any time that this was an ongoing investigation. They say it point blank. We're checking this out. We're checking that out. We want to know this, that. And I think the longest it took during those tapes was about 20 minutes before they just started, and that's how suddenly I got drugged into it. I got drugged into a thing that they're actually in Ventura to work out. My name wasn't in none of the paperwork. My name was in nothing until after the investigation, and these guys went in there and they said, "Oh boy." And that's when they came to me.
So when do you hear your name, and who brings up your name first?
Well, they're talking to like hang-arounds and prospects. And I don't know these guys, but they were saying stuff like Big Homie in Fresno, this guy Mike. They didn't know me from Adam, but they know what they were told by the powers that be. And then when it started hitting the fan and bikes started getting confiscated and this investigation started, there was a lot to it. Not just, I was a small part, but that came out in the end. Once they started investigating all that at the very end of the investigation, then all of a sudden this comes up. And then when I go sit with my attorney, then I found out why. Little George had gotten stopped on a bike that I traded stuff with another member of that charter. That member sold Georgie the bike, and then Georgie had problems with it. I don't know, from the time that I did a transaction with any of them guys, I want to say 6-7 months had passed, so I don't know why I'm responsible for something that's been old news to me. And I was reassured by the charter, nothing, blah, blah, blah. And I says, well, fine. And then it got bad about the information that the gang guys were receiving.
So what did you hear when George was on the tapes, right? Did he bring you up, or did the police bring you up?
They set him up. Well, actually, they set up everybody that was on there because they would chit chat and go, "Let's go in there." And he goes, "Let's see how fast it's going to take to, and let's get a response and see where we're going." I remember a couple of the messages or the statements they made. They approached George and they says, "Well, what are you going to do about it? Because already you told us who stole the bike." That's how they came out at him. "Well, you already told us who stole the bike." And then they go, "Well, what are you going to do about it? That guy just stole a bike, put a plate on it, and then sold it to you people. I said, well, number one is there's another statement that never occurred. I never sold nothing to anybody. One of the guys came down, they wanted one of my bikes. They called me a week later, said, hey, we'll trade you this for that. And I said, okay, whatever. Because I'm in the business of doing that. And I buy, sell, fix them up, dump them. I don't care. If there's money in it to be made for me, yeah, I'm in it. That's what I do. I'm a hustler, but they told George, they went and said, well, what is it that you're going to do about it? And George replied to him. He goes, well, if we find out that in fact is the truth, then he's going to have a real problem on his hands. And I'm sitting here going, now, and I've said this before, all of us that came around the club, it was already basically known or understood that we weren't naive as far as working in the underworld, kind of straddling that line, if you will. We had seen it, heard it, we had some experience. So basically all of us had the basics down. We know when to shut the fuck up. Do you talk to cops? No. I've probably known that since I was 13 years old. Why do I need a Hell's Angel or anybody else to tell me, hey, you got to keep your mouth shut? Come on, man. So if I know that's part of what we do and how we carry ourselves, why don't the people down there? And in my case, I had something to say, like, why is there 1 minute of any tape recording from anybody that's in our thing? I said, I find that hard to believe. I said, could you guys go through there and dig all through all them tapes and all that and find one that I did?
So you're not on one tape, not one tape.
None. Never.
So it's all these.
But I'm in a court case, though.
Yeah,
I'm in a court case.
No, who else got arrested with you when this hit the fan? Who else got arrested?
No, for what they were inquiring about. And when they started bringing up missing motorcycles and this and that, everybody down there, I don't know nothing. I heard about this guy or that, you know what I mean? And I just went, what the and they all had something to say. They either hid a bike or were told to hide a bike. Bike had nothing to do with me. It was something to do with George's old bike, and they were looking for that too. Well, in between all that, this bike that I traded off 7 or 8 months before that, it came up in conversation. But when they found out there was a problem, then everybody just started, the information started going towards me, and they were all saving, in my opinion, they were saving their own about being drug into an investigation where a court case might start,
Yeah.
You think possibly that George talked to these people on his own? And
well, funny you mentioned that. Okay, during one of the raids down there, they went to motorcycle shops, they went to George's, but I think that George was arrested for a substance. Okay, so after they got done in Ventura's, when they came to my house, they destroyed it. That's those guys that were pissing on all over my bed and all over my floors and all over my shower. That's what happened after they left Ventura and came to my house. And these guys, knocking holes in the walls. And they were telling me the reason they did that was to look for contraband.
Yeah.
Okay, who told you that I had contraband? Because they didn't find any. And I was never charged with a crime in Ventura. what they did was Ventura cops called San Luis Obispo and said, this is your baby. He's got a couple of suspicious parts in here, so now it's on you. So Ventura never prosecuted me for nothing. Now, the day after George was arrested, they got him on one of the recordings, a phone tap on this one. They had a phone tap at his house, so he called him up. He called up the detectives at the gang task force, called him up. Hey, what's up, dog? You know, all that. I don't know what transpired, but I don't talk to them guys. It's just hard. You know, this one was trying to do shit to me, and you want me to be nice to him. And if some people are under the impression that if I be polite and I do this, I'm going to get on my bike and go home. Okay, well, I hate to tell you guys that. I don't know what kind of criminal you guys have ever been, but that just, we have nothing to say. Well, anyway, he's on this tape asking them, hey, man, can't we work something out? Can't I do this or can't I do that? Yeah. And then one of these cops, I don't know who it was, but he said, you know what, motherfucker, we're done bending and breaking and having you feed the dog a bone in order to get you and the individuals that you wanted out of the shit. That's what he was doing. And one of them happened to be his son. Now, I got nothing against little Georgie, at all. My only problem is with George and his reluctance to shut up. There's nothing we have to say to you on the phone, at my house, at the donut shop, none of that. We have nothing to say. And if we do, we do it through attorneys. Okay. Right. We have somebody to represent us. And if we have a story, we'll talk to our attorney and let him know what we think we can let him know. And that's up to the powers that be to negotiate what happened. But you ain't hearing it out of my mouth, and that's what the problem lies. They took a lot of credence to a lot of things that were said by him. In other words, they went after me, like they hated me, and I never even met none of these guys. When they got into my house and what they did to it and what they did to me during the case and how they had me hemmed up, I tried to pay my way out and I couldn't do it. And this is one of the reasons why. The prosecutor in my county said the reason that they brought a case against me is because when their detectives were down there doing their ongoing investigation, they said that the statements that they got down there from all these individuals, and it was recorded, they used that to put a case on me. Okay, now, so I talked to my lawyer and I said, okay, what are we going to do here? He goes, okay, what we're going to do is subpoena all them motherfuckers that were on tape. And I go, well, some of those individuals may or may not be a part of our organization in one way or another. I don't know if you're a hang around, you're a prospect. Members, of course I know. Okay, but some of these other guys I don't. Well, they just said, hey, Mike, see this guy right here in this tape? I'm going to subpoena that motherfucker. He's going to tell us why he said what he said in them tapes. And then I go, I can't do that. I cannot subpoena guys in my own case.
Because you're still a part of the club at this point.
Oh,
right?
no, yeah. I'm in over this high, you know what I mean? And and then I said, what am I going to do? He goes, well, look, if you tell me you want me to subpoena him, and he goes, believe me, I put these 12 guys in there and I ask them all, why in the did you say what you said? Did somebody tell you to say that? Did somebody do this? Did somebody do that? Well, that's when the truth would have came out. And I would have walked away from that whole thing. I wasn't in it in the first place. Why did you bring me in? Because of the statements that we got when we were down there during an ongoing investigation. So, in my opinion, there should be no tapes. There should be nothing but like what I said. I got 2 words for you. F you. You know, and they all knew that. The cops all know that. They know it. Hey, when I left, I never got debriefed by anybody. They wouldn't even come around because they already knew what the answer was going to be. He's got a fucked up attitude and he hates us anyway. Okay, then.
Yeah.
So now that we got, I mean, not a soul came to talk to me from the club, out of the club, law enforcement, nobody.
Once you were out of the club, did they put you out bad so that you wouldn't talk about any of this?
Well, as far as direct knowledge to me, I don't know. You know, they told me that I was voted out because something that went on in Ventura. And I looked at them, and they said, well, they're coming down here. And I said, fucking A, man. I finally get to face whoever and the powers that be. It only takes me a second to make you, you know, because if I'm right and you're wrong, I'm not backpedaling. I'm coming at you, both mother feet. I'm jumping in. Why? Because I already know the answer. These guys don't know what I'm going to say, and they know what they did and what they said and who they said it to.
Now, George's story, right, when he leaves the club, he has a different story on what happened.
Okay. That's why when I heard what Rod had to say, he goes, hey, dude, this is us on the East Coast. I'm not a guy that sits out here and what's going on? It's not, you know, like a little chihuahua. He's in to here, as most of us were. We took it seriously. We didn't need anybody to tell us unless we needed to be told. But 99% of the time they come to us and then we figure out what should transpire, you know. And some of the information out of these people were something that was passed around. Like I said, there was a guy, they had him on tape for about 15, 20 minutes. And then one of the guys took the wife into the kitchen, right? She's, you can hear her in the background. She goes, you know, that goddamn bike was here. They told you to keep this bike and keep your mouth shut. She goes, well, I'll tell you what, motherfucker. If you don't tell them what they need to know right here, right now, you'll never see your kids again.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I don't know how many seconds it was, but was coming out like somebody had diarrhea.
He gave it up.
They didn't. Okay. The guys that are in my crew, right? During all that time, because we wanted our own charter and we're going through this with all these different East Coast, West Coast, I was everywhere. Okay. You're supposed to be, you know, closing your mouth and opening your ears. So when you find out how these guys are conducting themselves in certain situations that had more experience than I did, well, you take that to heart. You know, in other words, you know, use that for a stepping stone. Don't ignore it and say, they don't know what they're talking about. Well, that's the biggest mistake you can make, you know, because these guys do know what they're talking about. They've been in that club 15, 20, 30 years. Some of them had done long prison terms, some not, you know, but they weren't couch potato hell's angels. I'll tell you that. I didn't know any. You know, and the ones that started doing it, I wanted away from all them. I don't want to be around this. We're supposed to be carrying the torch, and you guys are sticking in the toilet, is my opinion. We're supposed to be, When we got picked, and Rod, when we got picked, it wasn't, we want you to alter all the history and you just do what you think's right. That's not what we do. Here's the history, here who does this. We came in and we're going to carry that torch wherever it may lead us. Not to face it, not do this. And, George used, in my opinion, that George used that the notoriety from carrying that torch. He used that as a reference. And believe me, everybody in the, citizens, Hell's Angels, it didn't matter. There was a lot of respect and a lot of love that, look, man, one of our guys is right in the middle of the shit. So guys that were young like me that were coming around, I was all infatuated with all that, until it was my turn to be exposed to, if they want me to run my area, you have to expose me to a certain amount of stuff and then let me carry on from there. But I'm in constant contact with my charter. You're not going to, with the guys within, I want to know everything. You got pulled over, you got this, somebody started out, you need to tell me, and I need to come up with something to keep that from happening again to somebody else. That's what I do. You keep everybody protected, you keep them in your little den right here, and there won't be somebody out there on his own, and that's what's happening in today. Today's deal is, I don't know how these guys found out some of the information they got, but god damn, man, it's like them cots are in the same room.
Yep.
Because somebody's out there doing it. I know that wasn't me. So but these guys,
it's not strong like it was, Mike.
No, it's not. Not in any,
there was ramifications if you were weak. Put it that way.
Oh, and you can believe you would know what a school bus tire track is, because they'd be running right over you, because there's plenty of motherfuckers out there willing to kick you under that bus. Plenty of guys, and in my case, and I didn't know this, like I said, it was my own being naive. I didn't know that men, especially as to who we're supposed to be, would be crying like little girls. Well, that guy this and that guy's over there doing that. When you go somewhere, everybody shows you love. Why is that? Because they've seen you, they've talked with you, they partied with you. They had a question, I helped them. I don't say, just find out for yourself. I'm not like that. I treated prospects good. If they showed potential, then they got 100% of my love. If they didn't, you didn't get nothing from me.
Yeah, but then what started happening? Remember, they started robbing the people down the street.
The problem is, once the discipline and the history and our way of doing things, it just slowly but surely got pushed out. And then this new regime, they were pushing the old folks out instead of learning from them. And then these youngsters started going, well, why do we got to do this? Why do we got to do that? Why do we have to be under some kind of control or whatever? I go, it's not control, you idiot. We're a big company, and it's got to run like a wheel with no broken spokes. If you ask me, some of you guys are broken spokes, and you need to get the fuck out of the way. And if there's disciplinary action to be done for that, then so be it. But not just because I want to show you how much a bully we can be.
Oh, yeah.
Look what just happened down in my old clubhouse, man. Holy, allegedly there's 4 murders that went off in there. And this, and then that, and then this, and now look at what's in the newspaper about our club. Well, we can't say back, well, that's just a few of the bad apples. That's not what we say, nothing, So I don't know. I have a lot of things that I didn't think were right. And when you voiced them the other day, and I've been sitting here like like I'm afraid to ruffle feathers because I'm not. But once I went over yours twice, and I went over it, and I wanted to hear the content, and the content was spot on. There's things that happen, and then there's things that you say.
Yep.
And I don't think that Mr. Christie is as knowledgeable or cops to being that knowledgeable about things going on. And everybody on the West Coast knows nothing happens in that county unless Big Daddy knows. That's a fucking fact. Nothing moves. Nothing does this. Oh, we don't do this. Okay, well, on this tape right here, it says that you got a guy outside of another club's member's house, and you're asking him, hey, on the telephone now. No meeting, no. Hey, man, I'm outside dude's house. You want me to go ahead and take this bike while I'm here? Okay. And dude's on the other end of the phone. Well, you know what? Now that you know what time of day it is and where you're going, we'll talk about it. But in a podcast, oh, we don't do that. I went to everybody, and I went to the powers of be. We don't do that. We don't do. It's a charter rule. We don't do. Oh, except for that pile that we found in my house. You know what I mean? It's cool if the Grand Poobah gets fucked off, but not the rest of us minions that are going to the meetings. Where when another charter calls and says, "Hey, look, we're shorthanded," we would feel good, and I say, "Hey, I grab 2 or 3 of my guys, and on the bikes we go, bam, we go."
Yep.
Okay, you don't ask, well, what do we got? No, if I tell you we're going, if you don't know what that means, that we have an issue, and we're going to go settle it. Yeah, we're not going to let anybody get picked on or jumped, or I don't know what you call it, but
Mike, we had it where I'll tell you guys we're going somewhere. Well, when are we going to be back? Whenever we get back. Well, what are we going to do? Well, I got to call my wife and tell her I'm not going to be home. You'll do that when we get back. Put your phone in that box and lock the box. We're out of here. Yep. Well, where are we going? You'll find out when we get there.
And see, that's just, we mean no disrespect to our wives and our girlfriends. But one thing is for sure, and if you don't agree, if you expect your better half to stand tough like you do, and when they start bringing up your children, your house, and them guys, you know how they are. They'll make a broad breakdown and cry, right? And they're telling them, oh, fuck, never mind, CPS is right outside. They'll do that. And women are not used to that or being exposed to that kind of treatment. So if you expect them to hold tough, well, you're wrong. So what do? We don't tell nobody nothing.
Shield them from it, right?
What we're doing is, believe me, I know you don't think it's true, but we're actually saving you from any, because with no doubt in your mind, you're going to say, I don't know shit. And I like it.
Because you shouldn't. They should not know.
Yes, and that pillow talking will get you 20 years,
Thank you. Right there. You got it, man.
Now, right Repo, what pissed you off about George's episode about Philadelphia, hellsangels, and the pagans?
I was there for all of it. I was not one of the pagans that were allowed to come over. Tommy, I'll strike on this. Tommy was the most upstanding, righteous dude.
Yep, I couldn't say it no better.
Tommy and I went places, man. We spent time together.
Right? They called him Thinker, right? Yeah.
Yep. And we spent a lot of time together. the guy that dropped that case on me for a 9 to 20 year hit, the member that dropped the case on me because he was snitching for money against the club for like a year and a half. He's the one that had his patch party the night Tommy got killed. Same
Tommy
guy
was
that
in his truck. He wasn't on his bike.
Right.
Well, I knew that.
George said,
I talked to everybody when I got out there. I mean,
Yep.
because not that it was for informational purposes, but they explained to me how it happened. He was following a couple guys on bikes.
Yep.
And he was in his truck. Somebody shot through the back window. A passer, buy or what?
They left out of the club that they were at for the guy's patch party, which was primarily a pagan club. And Tommy told that guy that night, "We're not going there. Pick a different place." And the guys that were, I was actually at another guy's funeral that night, or viewing. I was on my way to that club, and I'm talking to Tommy on the phone. He's like, "Don't worry about it, man. I'm going home. I'm getting ready to leave." And I said, "Well, who's with you?" Well, the one prospect shows up on his motorcycle. So the films down there showed law enforcement sitting in the parking lot and a vehicle sitting in the parking lot. No one went with Tommy. You let your leader walk the fuck out of a place knowing it's a bad zone.
Yes, exactly.
Get in his truck and leave alone. And it was raining, and he was following the kid on the bike. Apparently they stopped, because I know the real story and the lie that was projected for them to tell. When they got out to the expressway, the kid on the bike said to Tommy, "Man, we're being followed." Tommy said, "I know. We make that right, get on the expressway, and I want you to take off. If something goes down, I'll protect you." The vehicle came out behind them, got on the left side, started opening up fire. They cut off Bear Avenue exit off the expressway. And Tommy apparently was ducking down in the truck and caught a bullet here that came out the back of his head.
Yeah, well.
Protecting that prospect on the bike who quit less than 1 week later. Left.
Yeah, Tom was, I like that guy. And then when I got to the funeral, you had like 4 sons, huh?
Well, Mike, we can call them his sons. They weren't legitimately biologically his sons, but he treated them as his sons.
Right.
The kid's mom, she was a POS. He couldn't stand her. We were actually working on a place. Tommy was leaving that chick, Marge. He was getting rid of her. And he had another really great lady. He hated the fact that he was going to not be around the kids, but he treated them like they were his own.
Yeah, I could see that. It's just sad when you see that. And he wasn't old at all. He was a youngster. He was still pretty.
Yeah.
He hasn't been worn out like us.
No, I think he was 36 when he was killed.
Yeah, that was sad.
Yeah.
You know, and then that whole weekend wasn't all that happy. It was kind of crazy.
My God, it was cold. Oh my God, it was cold.
George says that the reason why all this happened was because the pagan members that became angels weren't loyal to the angels, and a bunch of information that.
Well, Tommy was one of them.
Tommy was a hell's angel.
Yeah,
he used to be a pagan, but he was loyal to the angels.
But I'm saying this, if go by his example, he was doing what he was supposed to. He dropped one and took the other on, you know.
But the thing with a lot of those guys that came with him, they were not loyal. They were not heart in it. 110% hell's angels. The last one that was an ex-pagan, they slow-mo. Ashes, ashes, dust to dust. It's about time he choked, and he's no longer with us. he was a piece of shit. When I followed him around for like 2.5 weeks, he's supposed to be out there taking care of stuff. And you know what he was doing? He was a card player. He was sitting in a card house, private card house, playing cards with a pagan. But I gotta say this: there was two guys on a motorcycle. Both of those guys are gone. Tommy and the kid that was a prospect passed away as well. So there's only one guy, or whomever out there, and I don't think that guy will ever tell on himself. So it's a cold case. It's a closed case in my eyes. And the only two guys that knew who was shooting at him are dead. There's speculation that it was the pagans. Okay, man, it could have been anybody. Let him rest is what I say.
Yeah.
He deserves the rest. It's a long time in my eyes. He deserves the rest. It took a lot of my life away from me. I got a 9 to 20 year case dropped on me by that member in Philadelphia. Now this is where some of George's ties lie. Where he gets the minutest little bit of credibility in what he said in his podcast. That guy was half Italian, half Irish, so he couldn't be a made member. But he was a worker out there on the street. He should have never been let around, because later on, in my case, we find out that he had sent like 6 dudes up the river 5-6 years ago for life. He was a cooperating informant. Here he is,
right?
And and here he is, a patched member now. Who did their homework on this guy?
Yeah.
Where he got let in. And when they picked me up on that case he set me up on, you know what they wanted, Mike? We know you're not the guy that did it, but we know you know what we want to know.
Yeah.
So if you just tell us what we want to know, we will make all this go away.
Yeah, well, thank you.
I sat back and I said, so you already know I'm not the dude that did it, but you're going to push this if I don't do what you want me to do.
Yeah, 3 year free and all that.
And I say, go f yourself, do what you got to do. And the story see in court.
Yep. In my instance, I was the West Coast treasurer, 10 years, right? Didn't nobody give me a break. I was the president of my charter, vice president. I transferred to Santa Barbara, and then because I couldn't stand Fresno anymore, they just I say the way I can describe it is coloring outside the lines, and you know better. And then why do I got to get up there as a grown man and say, hey, mother, why do I got to do this when you know goddamn well? And then they would politic the other guy. Oh, Mike's just being a prick, and Mike's this and Mike's that. No, Mike's trying to stay alive and keep our name out of the newspaper.
Tell that story, Mike, about the two guys who went to the motorcycle shop, I think it was.
Yeah, we have down the street from the clubhouse, we had a nice motorcycle shop, and the guy was a very well-known drag racer, motorcycles. He was doing the NHRA, and then once there was some politics there going on, he went over to Bonneville Salt Flats and Mirage and all those and started doing the speed record, the land speed record, right? Well, a couple of members in my charter went down to a shop, had a ton of work done on these two bikes. They get them done, whatever. And then I know somebody that was an employee there. So they finally said, hey, look, I need to talk to you. And I said, well, okay, what's up? And they go, well, them guys burnt Homeboy for 10 G's. And they go, well, them guys burnt Homeboy for 10 G's on the repairs on the bikes. And I'm just going, oh man, I lost my mind. Then when I bring it up, it's like, well, nobody else seems to have. I said, look, guys, this is what you don't understand about business. If I were to, if I was having a run or I was having something that was real important money wise, right? And we needed this to help us out and get ahead and get out of debt or whatever we were in, right? I could invite him, the race car team, the trade. You know what it looks like when them guys, you know what I mean? This is a big to do. If this guy was to come out and start helping us, making things look good. You take a bike like that, and do a burnout in front of 1,000 people. They love that. And then he's going to have his free things and some T-shirts. The guy's he's going to be advantageous to be friends with him. And he's 2 blocks from our clubhouse. And these guys got to go bully him, take his money, and then the or else came out. Well, if you say anything, if you this, if you that, if you this, then the or else comes out. Well, a guy that's God-fearing and does all this, doing real good, he's scared to death. And then I'm doing, pretty soon he wouldn't talk to me. And I go, what the And that's when it all came out.
Didn't they do it with their patches on too?
That's another one of my pet peeves. I don't give a fuck. I mean, hey, I won't say, I'll speak for myself. We play around with party favors throughout our time, but no matter what, I do this, it don't do me. Yep. Okay. We try to stay on the level, and it isn't like I haven't had my problems. I'm not going to, that's bullshit. But when you're wearing this, why is it that you got to go in someplace where I wouldn't go? Not that I'm afraid, it's just that we don't belong there, And I asked a couple of these guys, you guys are bottom feeding. They're not even in our fucking existence. And there you guys are with all this on, and you're telling all these people, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me all your money. And these are people that are, at one time were probably sitting out in our parties and having a great time. And then you turned on them and you start raping these people. I had people, because when you're in business, I know everybody. Well, they're telling me, hey, man, your guys came over and it was somebody's birthday or whatever, so they wanted they wanted the limousine driver in the limousine. They get it. Okay. Then the guy comes back and goes, hey, man, those guys fucked me. They trashed the car, stayed out 5, 6, 7 hours. And then, I got nothing out of it. And except for a couple guys walked up to me and said, hey, if a word comes out and we hear about it, the or else comes out. And I'm saying, why do you guys, I'll tell you, if you can go up to somebody, citizen or not, and say, hey, you know what a hell's angel is? I would say the reply is, oh, yeah, they have heard, or they heard a story or whatever. So why do we have to reiterate what we are and what we do? There's no reason for that. They knew it already, but some of you motherfuckers got your ego fucked up and you got to go push it on people. Well, that's not how we can survive in our hometown, because eventually they're going to be talking to Popo. And eventually Popo is going to take up the fight. And then we're outnumbered, outgunned, out everything. And so one of us is going to get caught up in some shit because of what somebody else did. And it's just, I think that, especially nowadays, I go, if them guys got arrested, how in the f did all this information come out when there was 4 guys in that room? but yet information was flowing like water out of water pipe.
Yep.
You know, and now what? Now we got a big thing going on for 3 or 4 years. It's in all the newspapers. And then some of the methods of doing this, they were very explicit about how things went down and what went on during, after, and all that. And these guys act like they were there. So they didn't even, it's hard to have a chance to defend yourself when you're holding the smoking gun and a bloody knife and then telling everybody you didn't do nothing. You know what I mean? You're sitting here like this, brother, and you're going, that's not me. Daft. You, that ain't me. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when we get done, you'll be thinking it's okay.
Mike, tell me about the time that George got put on the spot and he ended up laying his patch down, because people have a misconception on how he left the club. He tells people he just laid his patch down and left because they were becoming the people that they rebelled against, right?
Yes, all that. Okay. Now, that's a great story. That's a great story. Okay. But don't you dare try to make any of us swallow that. You know what I mean? We all know. In my opinion, it started when Sonny went to the club and asked permission to do the book and maybe a movie. Okay. We retained entertainment attorney. We had it. It was all by the book. Every goddamn thing that we did was by the book as far as legality. How much share would Sonny get? How much share would the club get? There was a percentage. If the club bomb or the movie bombs or the book bombs, the club is guaranteed something, but you know, Sonny was the one that has to eat it.
Yeah.
Because if it isn't successful, well, the opposite happened. Everything blew up about it. Everybody loved it. I personally did 3 book signings, you know, with Sonny. I mean, it was like it went over well. So the chance that he took, it ended up working out for him. So what I say, more power to him. Okay. Well, after that, and it's all going on, George comes to the club, you know, and he has some pretty good ideas. You know, he gets them out there. I got an idea about this, or I got an idea about that. And the club just said no. They weren't enthused about it as much as he was. Okay. And, you know, I don't care about your age or whatever. We got young guys, old guys, but I'm telling you, there's guys in there that I can't even explain how much knowledge that they have. And guys don't make, they don't just spit it out of their mouth. That's an opinion. They might want to go back, look, boot, do that, do a little homework, and then come up with what they have to say. Okay. But that's no reason for anybody. Okay. He's upset. Your butt hurt. That's great. But that doesn't mean that you're going to take a lesser part than what you've been doing. In other words, if you're that down here, you shouldn't be letting other people that don't have the experience you do jump in and speak for us. You know, and it just seemed to me that he was stuck on that camera, being what you call a representative. Okay. Well, I don't know. I was on the West Coast for, 17 years. And I just said, hey, you're absolutely right. The history and whatever okay, cool. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an isolated incident here where you let your guard down and you slipped one of our biggest things. We don't cooperate. And now you got a West Coast officer, you got a guy that's an officer in his charter. You got me I'm basically gave 120% of my life to the club because we don't get paid for none of that. We just go. If anybody asks you nothing, I don't know if no is in our vocabulary. We just say, what do you need? That's it. And you grab who you think you should grab and you go. Where that started losing its credence and our credibility as members of the Hells Angels. When Hells Angels start questioning themselves or questioning what they have overseen, and then we have to go, well, I don't want to be the rat that goes and does this. I don't want to be the guy that says, hey, something over here ain't right. And then have something start up. Then there's no end to how deep the hole will go.
Yeah.
And none of us are going to get out of it because we're just plain worker bees. We do what we're asked to do. We do it right. And then we carry on. Okay. I have no want to get paid. I just want to know that when it comes to my turn, that you can say, hey, that motherfucker will help you if you need it. There was a lot of questions when I switched over the money. I dealt with the East Coast and I didn't say, well, man, that's a bunch of shit. No, I didn't. You know what I mean? I went out there. I don't know if you remember Tato. Tato was the treasurer out there then. And anyway, I showed him how to do this money thing where it was completely legal. We're not profiting from nothing. We just use banks to store our money because it's safer. Then when I need to go send somebody to a funeral, I go get the money out of the bank, buy the plane ticket. Here's your per diem, and here's your ticket. Bye-bye. When I ride to USA to meet you guys out there, I'm not sitting with bundles of money in my thing. I got 4 pieces of plastic. They've had my on the hood of a car 100 times and didn't know that there was X amount of money laying right in front of you. And they just couldn't. And to me, I thought that was pretty smart on myself to ask, what's a foolproof way? And the guys will do it like this. You're not making no money. You're not getting no interest. The money that you're putting in is donations from within ourselves.
Because they were confiscating like 100,000, 60,000.
The guys in the East Coast, a guy's going to an OM, okay, and he's got to pay the powers that be for a USA run. Okay, well, that's not $5. Okay,
no,
it's a chunk. Okay, so on their way, bang, they get pulled over, right? And not that they're doing anything, but these guys, whatever they're doing, they'll make it up on the way they're stopping them. They've already made up a story. Oh, yeah. Okay, so if one of the brothers that's doing his job and taking the money where it goes, they get stopped, and then these guys take it from them for alleged dirty money or proceeds from a criminal organization. Okay, now we get, and the guy at the East Coast or whoever gets it taken. It costs the East Coast lawyer 20 to get back 60. Okay, so these guys, for doing his job and going out there, and the guy that's holding the shit, come on, you think they're going to pat him on the back? It's okay, bro. No,
you're responsible, kind of, right?
You must have been doing something to have them guys get in your. And so that poor bastard's going to get it forever. How long? You're suspect, period. Okay.
Didn't so that happen when they put the money together for the Mongol situation? Didn't they confiscate some of that money?
They were going after them specifically for being a criminal organization. And then when Doc testified against his crew, you got the president. I don't know about their hierarchy, whether it's national or whatever, but I know that he had, I mean, he sent to hell probably 30, 40 guys. He
Yeah.
sent them straight to hell. And all them guys, I can probably promise you, were loyal. They didn't deserve that. They were doing exactly what they were told. They got the grand poobah up here. Well, next thing you know, he's on TV telling the Mexican mafia, suck my. Oh, well, that was a big mistake. No, that's not the way we feel. That's the way you feel. And to throw us under the bus like that, now when them guys see us, you're not going to get nobody knocking on the door talking to you. You're going to come off that bike with holes in you. That's the way they work, and it's known by all of us. There's certain things that we just don't cross the line because it has no benefit to us. Them guys on the East Coast, okay? I mean, it's pretty much known that what they want to call organized crime and all this and who talks to who. Well, then all of a sudden you are one of them, and number one, we have no issues. So why bring one? Don't do business with somebody that we don't belong doing business with. And if it does work out, there's somebody that is there that is the most qualified to do so. Preferably not a hothead, That's where I had a few problems. When people start saying, I started letting my mouth overload my, like I tell them, hey, we're not going to be bullied by anybody. Let's talk. If we're going to talk, then that's fine. But I don't want to make no deals. I don't trust anybody. And now it's gotten to the point where we have to question our own people.
Yeah.
Now we're looking at, and I don't care how big or small the issue is. The issue is it should never, ever, ever, never reach outside of our lips. That's how we conduct ourselves. It don't come out of our mouths. So you can't say, well, I got it from the horses. No, you didn't. You lying. And then this hearsay you get, and then you modify it so you can get paid for that podcast or
that's what George is doing.
Okay. But okay. Nobody, and I mean, you're the first person, and I've been watching this stuff for a while now. You're the first person that said, you know what? All that you're putting out and getting paid, that's not exactly what transpired.
Yeah.
And we out here, because if you were friends with Tom, you felt it. And to have anybody that wasn't even here make comments about it is an insult.
Mike, I felt it hard. And it was a major insult.
When I said, I went over your deal twice. Then I called Bill. I said, hey, man, I said, Repo don't seem like he's real happy right now about some. I said, you need to have him call me. And I'll, basically, I'm in the same boat. We got somebody that's talking for big money that isn't accurate in the information that they're putting out. But in the all said and done, Hell's Angels is what this is about. That motherfucker, you see him on the podcast, got every picture, everything. Most of us lost. We had to cover up.
He went to prison. How come they didn't take all his?
I'm just saying, we have to go. You got to black that out. You got to do this. And I go, wait a minute. I didn't do anything to get kicked out of this club. What the fuck are you talking about? Next thing you know, you're out bad.
Yeah.
Now, anybody that plays by club rules, if that one motherfucker says, well, I know that what's his name talked to Rod, you're and he's and anybody that he talked to is and that's not the organization that I want to belong to. I mean, I don't know you from Adam, but I guarantee if I got out there and we start hanging out, you can believe it'll be like super glue. This is the way we carry ourselves because we always did. There's some people that always did and never strayed.
My thing, Mike, is they did what they did with me based on lies. and they put me out. I was still waiting on my case. While I'm out, I go to court and get convicted on. While I'm out, after they did what they did up in the law, and then they changed my status and bring me back. You guys, you mother. You went and you did what you did on lies, and you pushed those lies out to the West Coast as well.
Yes,
because you never asked a question, motherfuckers. You never asked a question. You assumed, but you want me to come stand in a room with 100+ motherfuckers, where probably 20 of those dudes was rats already. Go fuck yourself, East Coast.
Yep. And like I said,
ain't no better way to put it.
I tried to explain to Bill, look, if you have something to say and you're saying it like you did, and that, okay, you have nothing to gain from any of that. Nobody's paying you,
nope.
You know, to give the truth, you know, and you don't have to pay me for the truth. I'm going to tell you right now, this is what transpired. How do I know? Because I'm the one that was sitting in that cell for 7 months. And when you asked me why, they told me point blank, prosecutors, the cops, and everybody else, it's because of information that we gathered doing an ongoing investigation into Ventura, that some of them guys, I say some, because that's what it was. It wasn't the whole charge. There was a few guys in there that couldn't handle the pressure from law enforcement, and they said what they said to basically save their own ass.
Now, George got put on the spot, right? Towards the end of his reign, he was in, didn't they call him somewhere and they put him on the spot? Do you remember?
This is what I understood. They wanted him at the OM, not none of this hearsay, not somebody from a charter going to speak for you. And this ain't the first time I seen it with him. You know, we don't want any of this blah, blah, blah. Maybe that, but no, we want here right fucking now. Now, from what I was told is that an Oakland member, maybe two, pinned a letter, and they wanted George to read it aloud at the OM. Okay. And I know the guys that wrote it, you know, and, you know, when that time came, I heard the piece of paper went down and said, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to answer to this. Whatever. Now, doing it for the goodness of the heart and all that. Come on, man. You know, that ain't you can get these guys on these podcasts and these guys out here that are citizens, and they're just curious. You know, they got to know something, and they like being able to hear what he has to say, because they're taking it. Well, the guy's a 30-year member. He's got to be telling, okay, that's not the truth. And that's where you're like us. We even get a smell. We're looking for that motherfucker. Why? Because I smell homie. Don't try to tell me that's pudding. That's shit. And then we talk and we say, well, we need to go find this pile of shit. You know, we need to go find it and not just assume that everybody's telling us the truth, because that's not what it is no more. You know, loyalty is kind of backed out. You know,
George always claimed he investigated. He did the homework. He always made sure what he was doing was thoroughly investigated and righteous. Well, maybe he did then, but he sure don't now.
And
it's lies that come out of his mouth.
It just seems
it's
it
money
went on
and
for
lies.
about 10 years with me in the money situation. Okay. I had problems with certain charters being on time.
Yeah.
Now, I knew everybody well enough that, okay, say you came to me, say, Mike, I've blah, blah, blah. As soon as I get back home, whatever airmail, whatever the fuck it's going to be, it'll be there Monday or Tuesday. And I'll say to you, cool. I'll write it down in my notes. Rod said I get my shit. And do I feel bad about it? No, because on Monday I got my shit. So now we've established, you and I, what we say and what you do. There's no reason for me to disbelieve you.
Yeah.
But it got to a point where there was 3 or 4 charters you could count on that would make an excuse. And we can't make excuses on them on our assessments. You know how important those are, because we can't borrow because somebody didn't pay. Well, I'm not going to borrow from us. Why don't you just pay your bill? And I'm basically a pencil pusher when it comes to that stuff. I'm not a disciplinarian. I'm not going to go say, well, if you don't pay me or else. That's the sergeant's job. And I would bring it up and I don't care. It just kept the not following our protocol was just getting old with me. Then the guys would ask me and I go, man, you know, it's like when somebody from our own day wrote me a couple bad checks. And I said, hey, that's it. Well, it got so bad that I wrote 2 rules for the West Coast. If you don't pay and we bring it up, there's going to be a tax. If after all that, you don't come clean, then you're coming to the room and you're going to explain yourself. Yeah. Not, okay, they'd send a guy to the ON that wasn't even an officer. And he's supposed to know what we're doing. I can't get in his because he doesn't know. He was just told to show up at this meeting, bring the paperwork back, and that's it.
They purposely sent him there.
You know they did.
Yeah. Well, you'll be okay because you don't know anything. You go.
So what? They're trying to get away with like skating around and not paying it or something?
Stretch the time a little. Yes.
So did you change it to where an officer has to bring the money?
Well, the deal was you can't have a rule in anything we do because there's always somebody out there trying to circumvent that. Well, I didn't. As the law is written, swoop over here. And as the law is written, okay, we sit there, we all talk about it. Well, that's kind of shaky, but by the letter of the law, yeah, you could probably. Why are you trying to beat us down? We're your people. The things that we are doing, these parties that I put on, these things that go, it's all for us as a whole. But yeah, you don't want to help this, in my opinion. If this brother is needing money because he's got a serious case going and we owe this much money come, and we don't just call you up the day before and say, hey, by the way, everybody knows what's happening 2 months in advance. They know how much, they know why for, they know everything because it's in the minutes. Okay. Well, if a guy chooses to ignore that, then you're ignoring our club or somebody in this club as a whole. Somebody's not going to get quite the lawyer money that they should have. Now I got to explain to the lawyer, and then the lawyer will call one of the powers that be and say, well, I didn't get my money. Then guess who? They come and ask me. Well, I'm reluctant to say a name. It'll go south on me. I know it will.
You guys have a lot that you could say about this situation, right? If George was here in front of you, what would you say to him?
If George was here in front of me right now, I'd say, George, your information sucks. You're
Yeah.
just trying to make money and sell a book and sell your TV shows. And you're lying to the people that are buying your book and watching your shows. Buy Pee Wee's book because it's the truth. Don't buy George's, because me being a former brother of George's, I ripped his up and I threw it in my burn barrel because that's how much I care about George's word now.
As far as that goes, I mean, what transpired with me, I lost a lot. You know, I had a house on the Central Coast. I was doing okay. I'm president of the charter. I'm still in the West Coast officers. And, you know, I mean, all of this, it was going the way it was supposed to be going. I had no controversy with any individual charter. I mean, like I said, we didn't have to do nothing. If a guy came to me, hey, let me talk to you. Man, I f***ed up. I didn't bring the assessment money. Okay. I said, okay, when you get home, if you're telling me Monday or Tuesday, then hey, brother, that if you do that, then we are smooth. I don't have to go into anybody and tell on anybody. It's not a tattletale is not my job. My job is to make sure we stay financially straight and nobody's pilfering, you know, and it just, you know, fighting people over money and these statements that are being made by an individual that's on a forum like this. Okay, now, you know, when I first started this, I mean, you're seeing how many people, you know, respond, reply, subscribe, or whatever. With him doing that, these people are out there believing all this shit that didn't transpire.
Right.
And then when you put out information that is not true, somebody is going to get it. Somebody's going to get the blame. There's going to be a scapegoat. There is going to be somebody that takes the blame for that indiscretion. Okay. And I personally don't want anybody out there thinking that Hell's Angels are like that.
Right.
But I will put it out there that there is an individual that for a fact cooperated with law enforcement during an ongoing investigation of a president and a West Coast officer. And that man, because he couldn't defend himself without telling on other brothers, I took it myself. I never went to the club for a dime. I never did nothing. What they arranged for me, I paid for that arrangement. I gave that lawyer everything I could to keep. I paid him $10,000 just to make sure 100% that the club didn't get brought up in anything, that I did it myself. You know, and then when the judge asked me, I said, well, you know, to be honest with you, Your Honor, you know, if I may, I said, I'm a greedy motherfucker. And if them guys ain't putting in work with me, you think I'm going to share in the profits? And he just looked at me and he says, what? I says, well, I'm just telling you. I'm telling you how it is. I'm being honest. No, I didn't bring nobody in. No, I did it by myself. And that's the way it is. And regardless of what you think or what you're being told by like I said, I didn't know some of this information until recently. You know, I found out that some of the recordings that were done in my case, an ex-Ventura member took them and put them on show. You know, Rob was dying.
Yep.
Okay. I haven't talked to Rob in 10 years. He was in my charter in Fresno, and then he moved on. But I still took care of him every day because he was down. And so I'm one of those guys, if I had a little bit, okay. So anyway.
How did he get the tapes?
He was the president of Ventura, and I don't know how. Somebody gave it to him though.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, what he did was he called me up and I said, "Oh, hey, what's up? What's up?" And he goes, "Mike, I got to come clean with you." And I said, "Okay, what's up?" He goes, "Look, dude, I'm responsible, semi-responsible for you leaving the club." And I didn't say nothing. So I said, "Well, explain that to me." He goes, "Okay, when all this happened and you went to jail, blah, 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 somebody wanted to get the confiscated bikes back. And I guess there was a bitch about doing it or what have you." So anyway, when he gets out there, he makes statements. And these statements, these two guys are taken to the bank. Okay. Now, I find out during all these tapes, well, I read them all. I listen to them all. Well, 90% of that isn't even about me. It's about what George was doing. You know, there's a bank manager that thought he was pulling some shady shit. And it was a bike that George owned, sold it to a guy, kicked him out of the club and was trying to get it back. But the bank owned it. Okay. The guy borrowed 10 grand, gave it up. Well, somebody went in there and he was trying to get the bike back and said he never got paid.
Yeah.
So he's going to the bike and saying, "I want my shit back because I never got paid." Well, during the course of all this paperwork and these guys going and checking out all these stories, they end up at the bank and the guy tells him, he goes, "Hey, look, I talked to this dude a couple times," and he goes, "Look, after that," I said, "I didn't believe a single word." So he got on the phone and called the powers in law enforcement. He goes, "I'm not going to deal with this guy no more." So then they went after him for trying to do a false bank deal and this and that. So there's a whole bunch of shit.
But they're not supposed to do that either, right?
Look, okay, look. This is what I was to understand when I first came around. This thing, this uniform or this indicia, whatever you want to call it, it belongs to me or it belongs to the club, but I'm representing wearing it. Okay. And I am not to use this to better myself. Now, if I use this to better us as a whole, okay, cool. Because we all shared in whatever hustle or whatever that business deal that I made. If we all get it, you know what I mean? If I can donate to my charter, here's 10 grand because I did this or that, well, then that's great. But whatever we do while we're wearing this and we are members in good standing of this club, we're not supposed to be going out and using this for the or else treatment. We don't approach nobody and tell them, "Hey, mother, you know that if you don't, then 10 guys are going to show up down here and this motherfucker is going in flames." Well, most citizens that don't have any experience with dealing with outlaws or people that may or may not have crossed the line and that's how they conduct themselves. Well, I don't want to be one of them. You know, if I come at you, I'm coming at you and telling you right off the get-go, this is why, and this is what I can return to you if you help me. If you help our charter do this, here's what I'll do. Here's some shirts, here's meals, here's what I can do to show our appreciation for you helping us behind the scenes. Not go over there as soon as the guy turns his back, put a gun to that motherfucker and say, "Hey, give me this and give me that." Because that's what was going on. And
Don't
that's
tell
not
nobody.
what we're about. That's not. If it happens, if you get in a personal deal and you got to handle it the way you handle it, fine. Fine. But when it comes to our business as a club, we don't go over there and act like some 10-cent hoodlum.
And then you said that there was members that were selling substances with their guts on, right?
You know, and a lot of people said, "Well, they know who I am." I said, "Okay, But who you're dealing with is not my main concern. It is a concern. What I'm concerned about is who's back here 3 blocks away with a telephoto lens with your patch riding into a mother hot zone, and you motherfuckers are acting like it's all chilly willy. Well, meanwhile, like I said, whoever's riding that bike in there with no intention, and sometimes it was brothers from out of state, right? So you're taking a brother where there's a business that's under investigation for supplying whatever to underage girls. Some of my guys were, I don't know the word that I could actually say, but they were receiving funds from this guy that owned the shop.
Some kickback.
Well, not only that, they go down there, you know, and whatever's going on, everybody gets to jump in, you know. But that's not us. That was those 4 individuals. I'm not mad at me. I'm not mad at my charter. I'm not mad at Hell's Angels right now. I'm mad at certain people that took this and talked other people into hating us. Because believe me, and I know Rod's going to, at some point in time, somebody hated our ass because of what they assumed that we did.
Yep.
You know, and that's the bullshit. I had to live in Fresno. I was born and raised there, did all the things I did. But when all this shit coming out, I sold a bad bike to somebody, I took money, I did this and I did that. Well, there's none of that's true. Okay. So now what? Us against the world? You know, I'll be honest with you. I'll fight when I need to fight, but I'm not a dumbass that has to fight 10 guys over a subject that never even happened. Come on, man. My own charter. You know what I mean? God damn, there was guys in my own charter that decided, well, if he says you did it, you must have did it. What he did with
facts don't
Rob,
matter.
Yeah, and with Rob was dying, he took those tapes to the other guy, and they played them straight up from the courtroom. Straight up.
But they were talking about them too, but they didn't really have context to what they were.
And I'm not, you know, I didn't know that well, and I understand what he's trying to do. I said, but George is a formidable opponent. And if you're going to make accusations about that guy, you better know what you're talking about. In other words, that you can't lie about the tapes, okay, But you can't be calling that guy a rat or this or that. You know, he's accused me of saying that. I said, never use that word. I never, because that's pretty strong. You might as well call me a, you know, it hits just as bad rat in our world, you know, rat and a baby, any of that shit. I don't care which one of you done. We're going to treat you the same on each one of those counts. You know what I mean? So you guys, you know, and my deal is that I wasn't in there a long time. I mean, 7 months ain't nothing, but what I lost, my shop, every dime I had, vehicles, motorcycles,
your reputation,
your house. I mean, pretty soon I got nothing, you know.
Mike, 7 years, 5 to walk off, a house, my bikes, my income, my kids. That's what I got.
And I think that that's the kind of issue that we should be allowed to bring up, as long as we're not lying or embellishing or fucking getting compensated. We're not getting shit. But I feel that just getting it off my chest makes me feel $1,000 richer a minute. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm not afraid of anybody when it comes to that shit. I mean, what, you're going to be mad at me because I told the truth finally? Okay, all these things really transpired. And if you really want to get into it, find out, go get the things like I did when I was defending myself. I had to
Yep.
pay for all the transcripts, pay for all this, pay for all that. And then after I got it, my lawyer said, there's nothing I can do unless I subpoena all them guys, put them on the stand and say, is this you on this recording right here? Well, then cops are going to sit there and say, sure the is. Them two are going to say it. And this guy's going, well, that's not me. Or I'm going to plead the fifth. Okay, plead the fifth. They're still going to play them recordings, and them cops going to tell you why they did it. These guys were dirty, and we had them dead to rights.
Yeah.
So, you know, guys, the small guy gets.
You were the sacrificial lamb.
Basically, yeah.
Hey, I used to, they asked me when this first happened and, you know, I'm out and all that, I was pretty angry, but I didn't know everything. Now that I know everything, I'm not angry, but motherfucker, you ain't going to sit off in the corner and collect Staxx while we're over here living through what people had to say about us and trying to keep our head up high and, you know, finally just say, fuck it all, write it all off, continue to do what we do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that it needs to be brought to the attention of the same people that are listening to this crap out of an individual. Well, let's us, the guys that were actually there, that took part, not secondhand information. It wasn't written on the girl's bathroom at some bar. This is what I did. How do I have proof? Because I sat in that cell. All that they confiscated, you call them up and ask them if they did. They did. Oh, I mean, and it was I didn't get reimbursed by anybody for the indiscretion that was made. This guy flat ass saved his own ass and maybe a few others, and he made statements that weren't true that hurt other people that are members in the same goddamn club, which we know. It doesn't take anybody with any kind of special degree to find out. We don't fuck each other. Even though we know it happens, in general speaking, we're by the paper. We don't do that. If you got something to say, meet us at the deal down there. We'll work it out or we won't.
This happened that time, but do you think it possibly could have happened other times that people don't know about?
Okay. I don't know. I mean,
if it happened once, it could have happened.
How is it going to stop? Okay. If when we know the things that we know and it's happening, well, we're not allowed to get up there and say, hey, jerk this motherfucker up by his coattail and say, hey, this is my issue right now, not 10 years from now. Half the people that are involved, I would say more than half, there's probably like 8 or 9 guys involved in my case that are dead. That leaves 2 or 3 of us out.
Yeah.
One is George, one is me, and maybe 1 or 2 others, but the rest of the guys are deceased.
Yeah.
You know, so all I can do is I'm going to go off what I experienced. I'm going to, if I'm asked a question, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened to me and why. And that's exactly what the powers that be that were prosecuting me, they flat ass told me. Your boy down there, and my lawyer was so shook when he goes, who is this George Christie dude? I go, well, he's the grand poobah down there. He's, 40 years in the club. He's, he's involved up to here. And he goes, well, I'll tell you what, from what I listened to so far, you're
the problem, Mike, is a lot of these dudes that are politically active within the club that have a lot of time in, they overlook the indiscretions and they do.
Well,
and they don't question them on it.
No. And that to me is the single most problem as an organization. If you see a spade it's a spade. Okay. Doesn't
Yep.
bring me happiness to have to let somebody know this guy's a piece of shit. Okay. I don't want to, but goddamn, why do guys like me and you and all the rest of the guys? I got guys in Canada. I got guys everywhere that every single one of them got bad.
Yep.
And took every dime, every house, every motorcycle, everything for what he allegedly did. You know, when I know these guys like Pee Wee, I've known Pee Wee personally for a long time, man. And when he told me, well, do you guys think? I said, well, look, if you made a mistake or you misspoke, when these things, when you're under the gun, I do the same thing. You know, I was at Bill's house and I was throwing the microphone all over the walls and I didn't know. You know, I kept flying around, and every time I get upset, I tear that shit off, you know, because it's hard to swallow and relive that crap.
Yep.
It really is, you know. And I think Mooch or somebody else put it on there the other day. He goes, it's a small consolation, but when we do get things right and in perspective what really went on, it gives you 5 minutes of that you know, at least people know that I'm not a culprit and I'm not an enemy in my club. You know, I don't dislike my club and I don't say anything on here that disparages my club, but there are individuals in this club that are hiding behind this to do this, and that's a fact.
Yep.
It's not a rumor. It's a fact.
Oh,
and
it's
if
a
we
fact,
get enough
right?
of guys together, I mean, look at how many guys we got now in the B4L and all that stuff.
Over 200.
And they're not liars.
Nope.
Now, there is a couple that stepped on their dick, and I heard about it. I'm not going to take it out on him because he's already suffered enough. You know, I'm out. What does it matter to me? You know, but there's a lot of us that didn't do anything to deserve the treatment we got, making up stories about us. We're out bad. We did this. We did crimes against our club when yet. You know, I prospected for almost 6 years because I wanted my own charter in California. Okay. Then the other 11 years I put in as a member. So now I got 17 years time in this thing, and you just treated me like a piece of dog shit. I mean, you threw me out faster, and what? Yeah, somebody got saved their ass. And okay, more power to you, I guess. I thought by now somebody would catch on, but they hadn't. You know, and even with those tapes being played, you know, they did not get pushed to the end. Once you open up that can of worms and you start pushing, you better get in there and finish. Don't poke somebody. Don't give them a bleeder. I want that motherfucker to be leaked. You know what I mean?
I mean, this is the mic drop situation right here. I think.
He opened up the whole can of worms on himself the other day when he did that.
And like I said, I felt it be my obligation. I said, and then secondly, I said, Rod and I are going to work on something that has nothing to do with anything but us talking about our experiences. It isn't about anybody or everybody or, you know, that's not what we're doing here. This ain't a tattletale, you know, rumor, hearsay. That's not why we're doing it. We're doing something else to let people know how it is on different parts of the world, how we seen it.
Yeah.
And I said, if I'm going to work with him, but when I saw your deal, I said, I got to watch that again, you know? And then I listened to it and I said, man, this dude ain't happy. And at the very end, I loved it.
I did not sleep that night. I was out there on that goddamn beach. It was like 12 freaking degrees. I was burning up. I was sweating. I was so mad.
Hey, but at the end, you said, hey, mother. Then I said, well, I guess he means what he means, you know. But I called Bill right away. And I said,
Yep.
he's
Yep.
upset. And it sounds like he's got a subject matter to talk about that involved the same member that I had. So these things and
Yep.
this and that, it needs to stop. Guys like him
Yeah.
shouldn't become filthy rich and buying all these bikes and going to all these vacations. And, you know,
Yep.
okay. The part about your history of the club, okay, in the 80s, 90s, I give that to you. I don't say nothing about that because you are 100% accurate and you're probably one of the best persons to present that. Okay. But now we're getting to the point where you're running out of material, you know, and I don't like naming names. If I did something with you, am I supposed to say, hey, well, me and Rod was out here at 8:00 at night on December 13th, and we shot a couple motherfuckers out the window. You know what I mean? Why is that okay?
He has absolutely ran out of credible content that he has not used before.
Yes. And
so now it's hearsay and fictitious and not truthful, and he's lost all credibility.
And he was a member. He was a member when Tommy died. Did you see George?
No, he wasn't there. He was not there.
He might have sent a couple of guys there because I went with a lot of California guys.
Yep.
A lot. And it was snowing like a mother.
Oh, cold.
Oh, it was like, man, I'm telling you.
It was, and Bill, you might have to edit this. It was 0 degrees out. Oh my God, it was cold.
And this guy's from California. We left somebody that we're leaving. It's 110. We get out there, and I'm in my Carhartt and my sneakers, and I got me I probably got a jacket on and my pats, and I'm going
10 below and 40-mile-an-hour wind.
Yeah, but I mean, being as I had spoke with him on numerous occasions. I used to have to go to the OMs out there and get information. And then when there was question about funding, I would go out there personally, because John, JT being man, I argued with him a few times because he wasn't about to let anything go. I want to know, explain it to me and explain it. And I mean, by the time I got done with him, I wanted to crawl off in some, but I was thorough and he was satisfied. And that's what I cared about most. I said, okay, but.
Well, we could do this 10 more times.
Yeah. We all got stories that we could tell or we'd rather not tell. And I'd rather, I don't like names and I don't like places. And it's not because of anything, but somebody will take that little tidbit and turn it into something else. And now I have to answer for that too. Nah. You listen to this if you want to. If you don't like what I have to say, turn me the fuck off.
Start your own
telling you, I'm reaching out because something transpired that wasn't right. And a lot of us, like you said, were sacrificial lambs.
Yep.
And it wasn't for the club, it was for individuals. And that's something that we don't do that. We don't.
And it doesn't matter east or west. It goes on both sides like that.
We all know that. We know that we've had a few mistakes. And like I'll raise my hand. Hey, I had when that shit happened to me and I lost my membership, it fucked me up. For a while there. And I started taking painkillers and drinking beer. And I think that Bill even asked me, and I go, well, that was the self-medication was not the right way to take care of my problem. I should have went to a senior member, explained it all to them and said, give me a recommendation on what to do. Because all I'm doing is pissing and moaning and hating everybody. I had so much hate in me, it just, and you don't hate the whole, we hate a couple motherfuckers. that we're selfish, you know.
Well, we'll
I gotta
do this
jump out of
again.
here.
Yeah, we'll do this again. I really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Oh, don't that. We gotta get Red Bull. Gonna go sneak off a Red Bull, snort that shit. I told this motherfucker when I was out there, if I catch him again drinking that. Now let me tell you something, Bill. Just out of, not that it has anything to do with us, but my little my old lady's son-in-law, okay, he's in the hospital right now. He just got released. His deal is he lives on them, right? And he's in a high stress job, right? Well, his appendix broke open, and when they opened him up, he had all kind of abscesses and all this shit in him. They had to go out there. They had to remove some of his colon. They had to remove his gallbladder, and then they had to get all these abscesses that were in there from that shit, and they had to cut it out of him. Yeah. And this guy's in his 40s.
Damn.
Yeah.
How long has he been drinking it for?
It's a habit with him because he's high. He's like one of them super employees, you know.
Yeah. You
know, but
Billy, I had a buddy, 37 years old, drink 5 of them big Red Bulls a day, standing in front of me talking to me. Dropped cold, dead.
There ain't nothing failing.
Apart.
I told him I put my size 11 straight up.
I know. I got
stop drinking that crap.
I've been cutting back, man. I only drink a little bit.
I don't want to hear cut back. Stop.
I like it already. Hey, he's closer to you than me, so you know.
I'm really gonna consider quitting.
But he might hit you with both feet. Now you got a size 22 up your.
Yeah.
So listen.
All right, Ron, it's great to. I'm glad to meet you, and I mean we're gonna be talking. Because we have going.
Fallen Angels, the documentary is coming out soon. Stay tuned. Thank you guys. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell.
Your mother, your sister, your brother.
Every time they drop. Tell your mother's brother, sister's friend about Chatting with Staxx, the dopest motorcycle content on YouTube. If you don't like this show, too bad. Start your own podcast.
Yeah. Out. Hey, Mike with the mic behind the mic.